I want you to imagine something for me. Imagine the moment you realize your own child, the baby you carried, the teenager you stayed up worrying about, the adult you'd still take a bullet for, looks you dead in the eye, and lies to you like you're a stranger. Now imagine discovering that lie on Facebook. Over Beignet. That's where this story begins. But I promise you, it's not where it ends. My name is Marianne Keller. I'm 72 years old. I spent 40 years as a school principal, and I raised my son David alone after my husband died when David was just 9. For most of my life, I thought I did a good job. I thought I'd raised a good man. I was wrong. But we'll get to that. Hello everyone, before we continue, make sure you're already subscribed to the channel, and write in the comments, where are you watching this video from? We love knowing how far our stories are reaching. Let me take you back to where it all started, about 18 months before everything fell apart. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was dusting the mantel, and I stopped at a photograph of my late husband, Richard. He was standing in front of a postcard of New Orleans, grinning like a kid. We'd always talked about going there together, the jazz, the food, the history. But life got in the way. Work. David's college. Bills. And then Richard got sick. And just like that, our someday became never. So when David called me that Sunday and said, "Mom, what if we finally did it? What if we went to New Orleans, you and me?" I swear I felt my heart restart. We planned that trip for over a year. I'm talking spreadsheets, people, restaurant reservations, hotel comparisons, YouTube videos about the best beignet spots. I even bought a new dress, periwinkle blue, because Richard always said I looked beautiful in blue. I paid the deposits. $3,200. The hotel, a swamp tour, a dinner cruise on the Mississippi. David insisted he'd cover the rest once we got there. I told him not to worry about it, but he got that stubborn look he's had since he was 5. "Mom, let me do this for you. You've done enough." God, I was so proud of him. Then, 3 weeks before we were supposed to leave, my phone rang. I was in the kitchen making soup, chicken noodle, David's favorite, because he was coming over for dinner that night. When I saw his name on the screen, I smiled. I actually smiled. I shouldn't have. "Sweetheart, are you on your way?" But the voice that came back wasn't the voice of a man excited about dinner. It was tight. Strained. The kind of voice that makes a mother's stomach drop. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something." He told me he couldn't make dinner. Work emergency. Fine. But then he said the words that should have been my first clue. "Mom, I'm so sorry, but we have to cancel New Orleans." I remember gripping the counter. The soup bubbling behind me. My vision blurring just a little. Cancel? "David, the trip is in 3 weeks." He explained, or at least, he tried to. Money was tight. Rebecca's job had cut her hours. His company was doing layoffs. Her parents, the Winchesters, couldn't help this time because they had their own expenses. He sounded so defeated. "I can't take any more from you, Mom. You've already done so much." And here's the thing, I believed him. Because I'm his mother. Because I'd seen him struggle before. Because when you love someone, you want to believe them. I told him it was okay. That we'd go another time. That his dad would understand. I even offered to help with money, but he refused. Said he couldn't do that to me. When I hung up, I turned off the soup. Sat down at the kitchen table. And I let myself cry. Not just for the trip, but for my boy, my sweet boy, who was struggling and too proud to let me help. Pause, her voice hardens. 3 days later, I found out exactly how sweet he really was. It was a Wednesday morning. I was having coffee, scrolling through Facebook, something I barely did, but my book club friends posted pictures sometimes, and I like to keep up. And then I saw it. A new post from Rebecca. My daughter-in-law. David's wife. My finger hovered over the screen. For a second, I thought, maybe it's old photos. Maybe it's a throwback. Maybe. But no. The first picture loaded. David and Rebecca. Bourbon Street. Holding hurricanes in those tall plastic cups. Both of them grinning like lottery winners. I scrolled. More pictures. Café du Monde. Beignet piled high, powdered sugar everywhere. A selfie outside Commander's Palace. A shot of them on a riverboat at sunset, arms around each other, the city glowing behind them. And in half of those pictures? Rebecca's parents. The Winchesters. Posing. Smiling. Looking like they'd just funded world peace. One caption. That's all it took. So grateful to Mom and Dad Winchester for making this happen. Best surprise trip ever. I dropped my phone. My hands were shaking. My chest felt tight. I picked up the phone again, maybe I'd misread. Maybe I'd hallucinated. But no. There it was. Geotagged. New Orleans, Louisiana. Posted 2 hours ago. I checked the dates. They were there now. Right now. In the city I was supposed to be in. During the exact week we were supposed to go. I scrolled back through my emails. Found the hotel confirmation. Called the front desk. Hi, yes, I'm calling about a reservation under Keller. The woman's voice was chipper. Too chipper. Oh yes, Mrs. Keller. Your party checked in yesterday. Is everything all right with the room? Everything's perfect. Thank you. I sat there for an hour. Maybe 2. Just staring. My son, my only son, had looked me in the eye, lied about financial trouble, canceled our trip, and then used my reservations to take a vacation with his in-laws. You know what the worst part was? It wasn't even the lie. It was the caption. Surprise trip. Like I'd never existed. Like the deposits I'd paid, the plans I'd made, the year of excitement I'd carried, like none of it mattered. Most people would have called him right then. Screamed. Demanded answers. But I didn't do that. You don't spend 40 years as a school principal without learning a few things about human nature. And one of the first rules? Never confront someone when you're emotional. You gather evidence first. You get your ducks in a row. Then you act. So that's what I did. I started screenshotting. Every picture. Every caption. Every geotag. I saved them in a folder on my desktop labeled New Orleans Receipts. I pulled out my bank statements. Highlighted the $3,200 in deposits. Found the email chain where David and I had planned the whole thing, messages where he'd written things like, "Can't wait to do this with you, Mom, and Dad would be so proud." Funny how words look different when you know they're lies. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by printed Facebook photos, and asked myself one question over and over. Why? Why would he do this? Was it Rebecca? Her parents? Was I that embarrassing to be around? Was I not enough? For a little while, I'll admit, I blamed myself. Maybe I'd been too clingy. Too old-fashioned. Maybe he didn't want to spend a week with his elderly mother when he could be impressing the Winchesters. But then I remembered something. A lesson I used to teach my students when they got caught cheating. The lie isn't about the person you lied to. It's about who you've become. David didn't lie because I wasn't good enough. He lied because he wasn't. The next morning, I opened my address book. Found the number for Margaret Chin, my estate attorney. A woman I'd known for 20 years. Sharp as a tack. Kind, but no nonsense. I called her office. Margaret, it's Marianne Keller. I need to make some changes to my will. Can we meet this week? When David and Rebecca got back from New Orleans, I didn't say a word. He called me a few days later, chatty and casual. Told me about work stress and finally getting a break. Never mentioned the trip. Not once. I played along. Asked if he was eating enough. Told him I missed him. I'm not proud of that. But I needed time. Time to think. Time to plan. Time to figure out exactly what kind of man my son had become and what I was going to do about it. A month passed. I went to church. Volunteered at the library. Smiled at my neighbors. Lived my life like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I'd met with Margaret twice. Signed papers. Made decisions. Set things in motion that couldn't be undone. And then, one afternoon, David showed up at my door unannounced. He looked terrible. Unshaven. Red eyes. Hands shaking. For a split second, that old maternal panic kicked in, my baby's in trouble. But then he opened his mouth. Mom, I need your help. We're going to lose the house. I need $70,000, and I need it by the end of the month. $70,000. I looked at my son, this man I'd sacrificed everything for, standing in my living room, crying, begging for money to save his family. And do you know what I felt? Nothing. Well, not nothing. I felt something. But it wasn't sympathy. It was clarity. I took his hands. Looked him right in the eye. And I said the words I'd been practicing for weeks, David, you're my son. Let me see what I can do. He hugged me. Actually hugged me. Whispered, thank you, Mom. I knew you'd come through. And I hugged him back. Because I was going to come through. Just not the way he expected. I told him to come back Friday. Told him I needed time to get everything in order. When he left, I sat down, pulled out those Facebook screenshots one more time, and made a phone call. Margaret? It's time. Finalize everything. So here's my question for you, and I want you to really think about it. If your own child lied to you, humiliated you, and then came back asking for $70,000. Stick around. Because what I handed my son that Friday changed both of our lives forever. You want to know the difference between revenge and justice? Revenge is hot, it's screaming, crying, throwing things. Justice? Justice is cold. It's calculated. It sits in a lawyer's office signing documents while your hands don't even shake. I chose justice. But let me tell you, it required every ounce of self-control I had not to choose revenge. After David left my house that day, After he hugged me and thanked me for being his salvation, I stood at my front door and watched him drive away. His car disappeared around the corner, and I closed the door. Locked it. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I poured myself a bourbon. Neat. The expensive bottle Richard had been saving for a special occasion. I figured this qualified. I had 5 days until Friday. 5 days before David would come back expecting $70,000. 5 days to finalize what I'd started with Margaret. But here's what kept me up that first night, a question I couldn't shake. What if he was telling the truth this time? I know what you're thinking. Marianne, the man lied to you about New Orleans. He used your reservations. He humiliated you. And you're right. He did. But he's still my son. And that voice, that mother's voice that had soothed his nightmares and celebrated his victories and prayed over him for 43 years, that voice whispered, what if the house really is in trouble? What if this time it's real? So I did what any good investigator does. I verified. Tuesday morning, I sat down at my computer with a cup of coffee and started digging. Public records. Property records. Foreclosure listings. David's house, a modest 3-bedroom in a decent suburb, showed up in the county records. Mortgage taken out 6 years ago. But when I checked the foreclosure database, nothing. No notices. No liens. No indication that the bank was anywhere near taking that house. I sat back in my chair and felt something click into place. He's lying. Again. But this time? This lie was bigger. More desperate. And I needed to know why. Wednesday afternoon, I drove past David's house. I know, it sounds like something out of a detective show, doesn't it? But I had to see it with my own eyes. The lawn was mowed. The mailbox was intact. No foreclosure signs. No county notices taped to the door. Rebecca's car was in the driveway, a brand new SUV, by the way. Not exactly the vehicle of someone drowning in debt. I sat in my car across the street, watching their house, and I thought about all the times I'd helped David over the years. $5,000 when he needed a down payment for his first car. $10,000 when he and Rebecca got married, called it a wedding gift. Another $8,000 2 years ago when he said they were behind on medical bills. I never asked for receipts. I never demanded proof. Because you don't do that to family, right? Turns out, maybe you should. Thursday morning, I met with Margaret for what I told myself would be the final time. Her office smelled like leather and old books, the kind of place that makes you feel like serious things happen there. She had the documents spread across her desk. The trust papers. The scholarship fund guidelines. Everything. She looked at me over her reading glasses and asked the question I'd been avoiding. Marianne, are you absolutely certain about this? Once these documents are signed and notarized, there's no easy way back. Your assets will be locked in this trust. Even you won't have access to the principal. I thought about that Facebook photo. David and Rebecca with beignet. The caption thanking her parents. The way I'd been erased from a trip I'd paid for. I thought about him standing in my living room, tears streaming down his face, begging for $70,000 for a foreclosure that didn't exist. And I picked up the pen. Margaret, my son has taught me something valuable. He's taught me that I've been confusing love with enabling. And I'm done enabling. I signed every page. Initialed every clause. Watched the notary stamp each document with that satisfying think. It felt like closing a casket. But Margaret wasn't finished. She leaned forward, her expression serious. "Marianne, I need you to understand something. When David finds out what you've done, he's going to be angry. Possibly very angry. People have challenged trusts like this before, claiming the person wasn't of sound mind." She slid another paper across the desk. "I've arranged for you to undergo a cognitive evaluation with Dr. Patricia Okonkwo. She's a neuropsychologist. Top of her field. If David tries to claim you were incompetent or unduly influenced, we'll have documentation proving otherwise." I looked at that paper. At what my life had become. I was 72 years old, getting a mental competency test to protect myself from my own son. Have you ever had a moment where you realized your life had gone somewhere you never imagined? Not in a good way, in a way that makes you wonder how you got here? That was my moment. But I took the paper anyway. Thursday afternoon, I sat in Dr. Okonkwo's office answering questions designed to prove I wasn't losing my mind. "What year is it, Marianne? Who's the president? Can you count backwards from 100 by sevens?" I passed every test. Memory? Sharp. Reasoning? Sound. Decision-making capacity? Fully intact. Dr. Okonkwo signed off on the evaluation with a note that still makes me laugh. "Patient demonstrates exceptional cognitive function and clear understanding of complex financial decisions. No indication of diminished capacity whatsoever." In other words, this old lady knows exactly what she's doing. Friday morning, I woke up before dawn. Couldn't sleep. I kept rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd say it, whether I'd cry or scream or just hand him the envelope in silence. David was coming at 2 o'clock. I had 8 hours. I cleaned the house. Not because it was dirty, but because I needed to do something with my hands. I vacuumed. I dusted. I reorganized the bookshelf. And then I set the dining room table. I put out my good china. The set Richard and I got as a wedding gift. I made tea, Earl Grey, David's favorite. I arranged cookies on a plate, those butter cookies from the bakery he used to love as a kid. I set the table like I was hosting a funeral. Because in a way, I was. 1 o'clock came. Then 1:30. My phone buzzed. A text from David, "On my way. Thank you again, Mom. I love you." I stared at those 3 words. I love you. Did he? Did he really? Or did he love what I could give him? Here's a question I want you to sit with for a second. Can you love someone and still lie to them? Can you love someone and still use them? I used to think the answer was no. That love meant honesty. Respect. Sacrifice that went both ways. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe love is more complicated than that. Or maybe, just maybe, what David felt for me wasn't love at all. 2 o'clock. Right on time. I opened the door, and there he was. My son. Freshly shaved this time. Dressed in a button-down shirt and khakis. He'd made an effort. He hugged me. Tight. "Mom, you're a lifesaver." Seriously. I led him to the dining room. He saw the tea, the cookies, the china. "Wow, Mom. You didn't have to go to all this trouble." I smiled. "Sweetheart, it's not every day I get to see my son." He sat down. Eager. Expectant. I could see his eyes darting toward my purse, probably wondering if I had a cashier's check in there. I poured him tea. Slid the cookies closer. And then I reached under my placemat and pulled out a large manila envelope. I got everything in order, just like I promised. David's face lit up. Mom, thank you. You have no idea what this means. Open it, I said quietly. He tore into that envelope like a kid on Christmas morning. Pulled out the papers. Started reading. And I watched his face change. First, confusion. His brow furrowed. He flipped a page. Then another. Then recognition. His eyes widened. And then rage. Pure, unfiltered rage. What is this? His voice was shaking. I stayed calm. Those are the trust documents for the Keller Educational Scholarship Fund. Everything I own, the house, my savings, my investments, has been placed in an irrevocable trust. It's no longer mine to give. He stared at me. Like he didn't recognize me. You're joking. This is some kind of test, right? I shook my head. It's already done, David. Signed. Notarized. Legal. He exploded. Are you insane? Mom, I'm about to lose my house. I came to you for help. And that's when I reached into my pocket and pulled out the printed Facebook photos. Slid them across the table. Slowly. Deliberately. Funny you should mention losing things, David. Because last month, you told me you lost the money for New Orleans. Said you couldn't afford it. Said work was cutting hours. Said Rebecca's parents couldn't help. But somehow, you managed to enjoy those beignets anyway. I watched him stare at those photos. Watched the blood drain from his face. Did they taste good, sweetheart? Did you think about me at all while you were using the hotel reservation I paid for? He tried to speak. Stammered something about Rebecca's parents insisting, about it being rude to say no, about how it wasn't like that. I held up my hand. Stop. Just stop. You lied to me, David. You looked me in the eye and lied. And now you're here, crying about losing a house that isn't even in foreclosure. Yes, I checked, asking me for $70,000. So here's what I want to know, what's the money really for? His jaw clenched. That's none of your business. None of my business? You're asking me for $70,000, and it's none of my business? He stood up. Paced. Ran his hands through his hair. It's complicated, okay? I made some investments. They didn't pan out. I owe some people money. What kind of investments? Silence. David. What kind of investments? He wouldn't look at me. And that's when I knew. Gambling. Crypto. Some stupid get-rich-quick scheme. Maybe all three. My son, the boy I'd raised to be honest and responsible, was standing in my dining room, trying to con his own mother into bailing him out of his mistakes. Get out. My voice was quiet. Deadly quiet. Get out of my house. He turned on me then. Eyes blazing. You're going to regret this. You know that, right? You're being manipulated by that lawyer. She's taking advantage of you. You're an old woman who doesn't understand what she's signing. I reached into the envelope and pulled out one more document. The cognitive evaluation. Slid it across the table. He grabbed the papers. All of them. Crumpled the Facebook photos in his fist. We'll see about this. We'll see what a judge says. And he stormed out. The door slammed so hard, one of Richard's pictures fell off the wall. I sat there in my dining room, surrounded by untouched tea and cookies, and I cried. Not because I regretted what I'd done, but because I'd finally accepted what I'd been denying for years. My son was not the man I'd raised him to be. And I had to decide if I could live with that. So here's my question for you: when do you stop saving someone who doesn't want to be saved? Because I was about to find out that David wasn't done fighting. Not by a long shot. 2 weeks later, I was served with legal papers. My son was suing me for mental incompetence. And the war had just begun. Have you ever been sued by your own child? I don't recommend it. But if it ever happens to you, I'll tell you what I learned: when someone takes you to court claiming you've lost your mind, the best revenge is proving, beyond any shadow of doubt, that you're the sanest person in the room. Let me show you how I did exactly that. 2 weeks after David stormed out of my house, a process server knocked on my door. I was watering my orchids, those stubborn little things that refuse to bloom unless you do everything just right. The woman handed me an envelope. Legal-sized. Heavy. Marianne Keller? You've been served. I thanked her. Closed the door. Sat down at my kitchen table and opened it. Petition for determination of mental incompetence. Filed by David Michael Keller. Petitioner claims respondent, that's me, has demonstrated diminished cognitive capacity, vulnerability to undue influence, and inability to manage financial affairs. My son was trying to have me declared mentally unfit. I'm not going to lie to you, that hurt. Not because I was afraid of losing. I had Dr. Okonkwo's evaluation. I had Margaret. I had the truth. But seeing your child's signature on legal documents claiming you're senile? That's a different kind of betrayal. I called Margaret immediately. She wasn't surprised. I was wondering when this would come. Marianne, are you ready for this fight? I looked at the papers spread across my table. At the life I'd built. At the choice I'd made. Margaret, I've been ready since the day I saw those Facebook photos. She explained what would happen next. Court-appointed evaluations. Depositions. A hearing where David would present his case and I'd present mine. He's going to paint you as a confused old woman manipulated by a greedy lawyer, meaning me. He'll bring witnesses. Probably Rebecca. Maybe her parents. Let him, I said. The court appointed its own psychologist, Dr. Raymond Chin. No relation to Margaret, ironically. I met him in a sterile office that smelled like disinfectant and old carpet. He put me through the gauntlet. Cognitive tests. Memory assessments. Questions about my daily life, my decision-making, my relationships. Mrs. Keller, can you explain why you created this trust? I looked him dead in the eye. I created it because I realized I'd been enabling behavior that needed to stop. My son lied to me, used me, and then demanded money for problems he created himself. The trust wasn't an act of senility, it was an act of self-preservation. Dr. Chin didn't smile. Didn't frown. Just scribbled notes. 2 weeks later, his report came back, no evidence of cognitive impairment. Patient demonstrates clear reasoning, intact memory, and full understanding of financial decisions made. Strike one for David. Next came depositions. I sat across from David's attorney, a sharp-dressed man named Bradley Winters who looked like he'd never been told no in his life. He tried everything. Mrs. Keller, isn't it true you live alone? Yes. Don't you find that isolating? I find it peaceful. When was the last time you saw a doctor? 3 months ago. Annual checkup. Clean bill of health. Would you like to see the records? He didn't. He tried to twist my words. Suggest I was lonely, confused, desperate for companionship, easy prey for an attorney with an agenda. But here's the thing about spending 40 years dealing with teenagers trying to talk their way out of trouble: you learn to spot manipulation a mile away. Mr. Winters, I'm not confused. I'm not lonely. And I'm certainly not being manipulated. What I am is a woman who finally stopped letting her son treat her like an ATM. Margaret told me later that his face went pale. But David's team wasn't done. They subpoenaed my medical records, my bank statements, even my grocery receipts, trying to find some pattern of erratic behavior. They found nothing. Because there was nothing to find. Then they brought in their own expert, a psychologist who'd never met me but was willing to testify that my actions were consistent with diminished capacity. Based on what? A paragraph summary David's lawyer had written. Margaret tore him apart on cross-examination. Doctor, you never actually evaluated Mrs. Keller, did you? No, but based on the pattern of behavior, so you're diagnosing someone you've never met based on a description written by the person suing her? He had no good answer for that. Finally, 3 months after being served, we went to court. I wore my periwinkle dress, the one I'd bought for New Orleans. Felt appropriate somehow. David sat on the opposite side of the courtroom with Rebecca and her parents. He wouldn't look at me. The Winchesters, Rebecca's parents, wore matching expressions of righteous indignation. Like I was the villain in this story. I wondered if they knew the truth. If David had told them he'd lied to me. If they cared. Probably not. David's attorney presented first. Called Rebecca to the stand. She testified that I'd changed. Become distant and cold. That I'd stopped returning calls promptly. She used to be so warm, Rebecca said, dabbing her eyes. Now it's like talking to a stranger. Margaret asked one question on cross. Mrs. Keller, did you or your husband accompany David and Marianne on the New Orleans trip they'd planned together? Rebecca's face flushed. That was different. Different how? No further questions. Then David took the stand. My son. The boy I'd rocked to sleep. The teenager I'd helped with homework. The man I'd believed in. He sat up there and lied. He claimed I'd been acting strangely for months. That I'd forgotten conversations. Repeated myself. Made irrational decisions. She gave away everything to a charity she'd never mentioned before. That's not normal. Margaret stood up for cross-examination. She had a folder in her hand. Mr. Keller, you told your mother you needed to cancel your New Orleans trip due to financial hardship. Is that correct? David hesitated. Yes. And yet you took that exact trip, using her hotel reservations, just days later. With your in-laws. Is that also correct? He stammered. Tried to explain. Margaret cut him off. Yes or no, Mr. Keller? Yes. She pulled out the Facebook photos. Entered them as evidence. The judge, a stern woman named Beatrice Morton, studied them carefully. Mr. Keller, you understand that these photos directly contradict your testimony that your mother's concerns were baseless? David's attorney objected. Judge Morton overruled. Then Margaret went for the throat. Mr. Keller, when you asked your mother for $70,000, you claimed it was to prevent foreclosure on your home. Were you facing foreclosure? Not, technically. Margaret pulled out county records. Entered them as evidence. So you lied about that too. It wasn't a question. What was the $70,000 actually for, Mr. Keller? David's jaw clenched. Personal expenses. What kind of personal expenses require $70,000 in cash by the end of the month? His attorney jumped in. Objection, relevance. Judge Morton leaned forward. Actually, counselor, I'd like to hear this answer too. Mr. Keller? I'd made some investments that didn't work out. Margaret wasn't satisfied. Investments, or gambling debts? The courtroom went silent. David didn't answer. Didn't have to. His face said everything. The judge called a recess. When we returned, she delivered her ruling. I've reviewed the evidence, the evaluations, and the testimony. Mrs. Keller has demonstrated full cognitive capacity. Her decision to create an educational trust was not only rational, it was commendable. Furthermore, this court finds that the petitioner's claims are not supported by credible evidence and appear motivated by financial interest rather than genuine concern for his mother's welfare. Petition denied. I didn't celebrate. Didn't gloat. I just sat there, hands folded, while David's world crumbled around him. He left without looking at me. Rebecca followed, crying. The Winchesters gave me a look that could have curdled milk. The weeks that followed were quiet. Too quiet. David didn't call. Didn't text. I heard through the grapevine, a neighbor who knew Rebecca's cousin, that they were working through things. I hoped they were. I really did. But I also knew some bridges, once burned, don't get rebuilt. 6 months later, I attended the first Keller Educational Trust Scholarship Ceremony. 23 students received awards. Kids from broken homes, foster care, single-parent families. Kids who'd been told they'd never make it. One girl, Jasmine, 17, wanted to be a nurse, hugged me so tight I thought my ribs might crack. "Thank you for believing in people like me," she whispered. And right then, I knew I'd made the right choice. A year after the court case, I did something I'd been putting off. I booked a trip to New Orleans. Solo. I walked Bourbon Street. Ate beignets at Café du Monde, they were just as good as everyone said. I took a riverboat cruise at sunset and listened to a jazz band play What a Wonderful World. I didn't post about it on Facebook. Didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I just lived. On my last night, I sat in a tiny jazz club in the French Quarter. The trumpet player was older than me, fingers gnarled with arthritis, but when he played? Magic. A tear rolled down my cheek. Not from sadness, from release. I'd spent so much of my life being someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's solution. And for the first time in decades, I was just Mary Ann. It felt like coming home. It's been 2 years since that courtroom. David and I haven't spoken. I don't know if we ever will. Some people say I was too harsh. That I should have given him another chance. That family is supposed to forgive. But here's what I know. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone keep hurting you. Love doesn't mean sacrificing your dignity. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them face their consequences. The Keller Trust has now helped 73 students. 73 kids who'll never know my son's name, but who'll carry forward the values I tried to teach him. Maybe that's legacy enough. So here's my final question, not just for me, but for you. When does protecting yourself stop being selfish and start being survival? Think about it. I'm 74 now. I sleep well. I volunteer. I travel when I want to. I've built a life that belongs to me. And if I've learned anything, it's this: you can't save someone who's determined to drown. But you can sure as hell save yourself. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and self-respect? Have you ever been betrayed by someone you loved? What did you do? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt used, dismissed, or taken for granted, share this video. Someone in your life needs to hear it. Hit that subscribe button. More stories coming soon. And remember, it's never too late to choose yourself.